Every now and then I see a new world shining through a sea of fog. I wake up in the morning like it never was at all.
I think that the first band that I really got into was the Monkees, from seeing their reruns on TV when I was probably about 6 or so, and from there I just my folks seeing that it was something that really engaged me and in general was a healthy thing for me. They in turn bought me some more records, bought me some Beatles records and some Osmonds records, things like that, and were generally supportive. And I started listening to the radio and just really from the age of 6 on, I listened to a lot of music. By the time I was a teenager, I had discovered Led Zeppelin. Before then, Kiss made a big impression on me as well. And growing up just outside of Boston, we have some great college radio there as well. So probably starting at age about 13 or so, I started listening to college radio and discovering this whole world of music that existed outside of the mainstream that really inspired me. There were a handful of great bands in Boston. I think the Boston rock scene, the club scene, might have been at its peak in the sort of early to mid 80s. And though I was too young at the time to actually participate in that, I got a real sense of it from college radio, from hearing about these bands, and I think it really set Boston apart and made my own musical experience quite unique. So for college radio in Boston, there were a handful of fantastic stations: the Boston College station, WZBC, the MIT station, WMBR, the Emerson College station, WERS, had a show called Metrowave, where a live band used to come on and play for, do a set, and it was fantastic. And some of these legendary bands actually played on this. And as an impressionable 14-year-old, I would sit at home with my little cassette recorder and tape these sets. I still have a bunch of them, and it was fantastic. Great record scene in Boston as well. There are a bunch of stores. There's a store that's still actually there right in the heart of Kenmore Square called Nuggets that somehow has survived, this mass gentrification. Just this vibrant, thriving community of rock in Boston that was just fantastic to grow up around. First band that I played in was actually in high school, and it was called Disfigure. My good friend Greg was a guitar player, and he taught me how to play bass. And with a few other people in school, we started this band that was sort of based on some of the hardcore bands, some of the punk rock bands we were listening to and going to see at all ages shows. And we didn't do a tremendous amount, but we had a fantastic time. Played some parties, and it was definitely a good, a fun way to start. My same friend Greg and I actually had another band called the Duckbills with another friend Pete, who went on to play with a fantastic band called the Figs. And that was our foray into the power trio, not in a traditional sense, but more in a modern sense, more a sort of Husker Du kind of, sort of trio. I started playing the bass when I was about 16 or so. And it's sort of hard not to get curious about the guitar. So I dabbled a little bit with the guitar, when I was 17 or 18 or so. Eventually took a handful of lessons when I was about 20 or so. And that's been most of my musical training, or most of my formal training. And I've just sort of messed around with things after that. I'm definitely not a real piano player. I can sort of conjure up a little bit of a rock piano track when that's, when the situation calls for it. But mostly bass and guitar is what I play. I'm actually quite happy with how people are responding to the record. I didn't quite expect it. I think it does stand apart from what else is going on out there. It's, I didn't really mean to make a record for anyone anyone but myself. And probably the 15-year-old version of me is who I really wanted to please. I also make it a point to really experiment when I record, and because it's really my thing and I don't really have to accommodate, other band members or anything else, I can really run my fingers through it and figure out something new, something new to do with these more familiar things. And I think that probably sets it apart as well. I know it's a funny sounding name. So white space flavors are actually, it's a term that flavorists use to describe flavors that don't exist in nature, that are manufactured in a laboratory, like blue raspberry. The other part, parties on TV, and it's really in contrast to real parties. So I suppose I've always written about alienation, about separation from other people, about separation from oneself, but I realized that the thing underlying this group of songs, as I was putting them together to record, the thing that unified the most was that sort of larger sense of distinction. It just sort of came to me, and I guess consequently was a nice way of wrapping up the mood of this record with a bow and presenting it. So at some point, probably around 2010 or so, I having played in a number of rock bands before, just decided that I really wanted to follow my own vision musically and experiment. And I decided that I really wanted to make 5 records over the course of 10 years, where it would be, I would write for a year and then record for a year. And that consequently was the start of the Grand Undoing. First record was called Appeasing the Sick, and that came out in 2011. This is the second one now. I already have the third one, very much underway. And I'm actually having the time of my life doing it, because it's so much fun to assemble an entire record with the notion of the whole record in mind, where I'll write a couple rock songs. I'll think, okay, I want to, as a means to making it dynamic and full, now I'll write a couple mellower songs, and then it sort of evolves almost like a painting. And it's fun, and I definitely wouldn't go back to doing it another way. There's actually a bunch of different ways that a song starts. Sometimes I'll just get an idea for a melody or a chord progression or some sort of topic that I want to tackle. And then it's, more of a question of just messing around and experimenting and seeing what sounds good. But in order for me to actually pursue a song, it really has to have some sort of emotional center that draws me to it, that makes me feel something. Because if it doesn't have that, it's just chords and it's just a song. And it's actually one of my biggest complaints about a lot of music today, is that there's no real emotional center. And to find that is often the trickiest part. Once you have that and you know what the song's about, what you want to say, the rest is kind of fun. The rest is just sort of filling things in. But it has to, it's not so much that it has to be about something very tangible and specific, but it has to make you feel something. And hopefully it expresses something that, that people can relate to, whether they know what it's actually about or not, but hopefully they tap into the feeling of it. Yeah, there's a bit of death to the whole thing. Actually, I lost my mother amidst the making of this record, so there was something that informed the whole writing process. That was actually an actual line, "I am death, death is near," which seems a little bit out of context, or doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the context of the song. But that's actually a real quote that came up in a fairly dark way, and I said, "Wow, that's musical. That really needs to go somewhere." And it ended up tying up the whole record. I wanted to really feature strings in this. for a couple reasons. I thought that there's a bit of punk rock raggedness to this whole record, and I wanted something to temper that a bit. I'm not big on writing songs or making records with the notion of referencing things, but I wanted it to be clear, I suppose, that I love some of that, the 60s stuff, the late 60s stuff with strings. I've always liked strings in music. They resonate with people, they're emotional, and I thought that it would sit well in there, and I thought it would take it out even further.